Good afternoon and welcome to WCEG Network. You are listening to the new WCEG Network on WCEGTalkRadio.com, or you can watch us live on your smart TV on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just search for WCEG Network. I am Vincent Cheeks, your host of Conversations in Education for the next hour. We are the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life into the community. Subscribe to our free YouTube channel. Just search for WCEG Network. Like, follow, and connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We also have new platforms, new free mobile apps. We all love that word free. It is absolutely free. For your Apple phones and iPads, go to your Apple store and search for WCEG Talk Radio. For Apple TV, search WCEG Network TV. For your Apple Watch, search WCEG Network. Android and mobile phones and tablets, go to your Google Play Store and search for WCEG Talk Radio. And last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Now, today we have another great show for you. I would like to welcome this very, very special guest. I consider her a friend. She is a motivational speaker. She's a spoken word artist and author. This is her book, Pamela Diana Evolutionary Trilogy, Me, Myself, and I, a collection of poetry and verses. She is also a youth and senior advocate. Please welcome to Conversations in Education, Miss Pamela Diana Poole-Starks, aka Tellem O.G. Welcome.
Good evening, WCEG Radio, the new WCEG Radio, and good evening, Vincent Cheeks. How are you?
I am well. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Excellent. Thank you for that warm welcome.
Yes, always. And I would like to say this to you personally, because we hear about people receiving their flowers when they're alive, right? So I would like to give you your flowers from me to you and from WCEG Network to you, because you have been a constant supporter of myself and of our radio station. And I can't thank you enough and tell you how much it means to me that you are one of our supporters. So thank you very much, ma'am. It is greatly appreciated. And so today, we're going to be discussing your program, Missing in Action Dads, and the negative effects of absentee fathers and how they affect the children and the community. And we would also like to offer solutions, because that's what we do here at WCEG Network. So with that being said, I know you have a spoken word piece that you would like to share to open the store. So please, the program, so please let us hear that. Thank you.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much. The title of this piece is called Get Some Too. Now, baby boy is in the street. He hasn't had anything to eat. They say he got a gun, and now he's on the run. Hey, runaway dad. It might be part of this is on you. He might get some time for this crime, but you might ought to get some too. Mama's looking sweet, and now she's sleeping with a thug. She's getting it on the regular every day, but she can't even get a hug. Hey, runaway dad, it's all on you, some of it. He might get some time for the crime, but you might get some too. Baby sister's run away because the thug was picking at her every day. She went looking for love, and now a baby's on the way. Hey, runaway dad. Part of this is on you. They giving time for some crimes. You might get some of this too. Now, mama's been beat to a pulp by the thug in a rage. Somebody made a phone call, and in my day, they called it dropping a dime. And he gonna get a lot of time. Hey, runaway dad, part of this might be on you. They gonna give him some time for those crimes, but you might ought to get some too. Hey, you ever look in your mirror, rearview mirror, and see what you're leaving behind? You know you ought to try to be there if you could and spend a little time. Hey, runaway dad, sometimes it's all on you. They're giving time for all kind of crimes behind this, and you might wind up getting some too. Check your rear view mirror sometimes and see what and who you are leaving behind. Hey, runaway dad.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. I love it. It got a little deep, so let's explore the poem before we get into our overall conversation.
So we're gonna unpack it?
Yes, let's unpack it. That's what counselors say. We're gonna unpack
That's what they say at church, right?
it. So what was your inspiration for writing the poem, Get Some To?
First of all, let me say, because on the forum you have people with all kind of positive people who, for whatever reasons, had to go away. They were sent away, threatened to get out of here, whatever. And a lot of times, some of them didn't even know about it. So this is not about that. This is my testimony today. This is
Okay.
a joint testimony with the children that I had. I'm a single parent also.
Okay.
Representative Stonewall the other day, yesterday. But my biggest part was about the children and what happens with them by not having the hedges that are around them that would have been or should have been around them that didn't block all the invasions that happened to the children. So that's what wrote it. And part of it is also the female part is there. Because at this point, as somebody asked, how are the children doing being a single parent? When a piece of the pie is missing, how you approach your adult life and how you don't approach adult life and your success in it has most times everything to do with that.
Okay.
Remember, the side, they call it side effects, but there's no such thing as side effect. It's really a direct effect. So that's what inspired me to write it. And what I'm gonna do, put some sound to it, put some music. Anybody's out there listening, this is not what we do, but Atlanta is full of all kind of qualified people. It needs some sound because it's not an accusation. It's a reflection of, it's a mirror. And if we don't hold a mirror up to what's going on, it's a pandemic, really. I mean, it's global. If we don't hold a mirror and say, this gotta stop, enough is enough. But we've got to approach it in a way like we're saying. People are listening to stuff and influenced by what they listen and hear, especially in spoken word. So if it's not spoken word and yank the cover off, bear the buck naked truth of what's really going on, in my opinion, then that's what motivated me to write this.
Okay. And so did I hear you say that some of this content in the poem did come from a personal experience?
Yes, it did. Because I was a baby for like the youngest child in the family for more than almost 6 years before my youngest sister was born. And I was my dad, my dad was there and he was there with us and I loved him, whether he was doing what he was supposed to do or not. Children didn't mix in grown folk business. So they tell you, as a matter of fact, when I digress here, but my mother couldn't even ask, like they're not teaching anything in school. The parents say, don't teach my child that. My mother couldn't even ask why she was cycling. She couldn't even ask because her mother couldn't ask. So shh, don't talk about it.
Right.
That's really a crippling place to be. So I wasn't able to ask why he wasn't there. All I know, they never fought, they never fell out. I don't know anything about that. But at some point, he wasn't there anymore. That was my conclusion. Now he's here. Now he's not there. But did I do something? Did somebody do something? We have no one to ask or to give us any clarity or any way to look at why he's not there. And he was in sales in Mississippi back in those days, but he always came home.
Right.
Then one day he didn't, and we couldn't ask. So that's what I meant about that. So my whole dysfunctional part of not being able to accept love or feel that 9 out of 10, they say, well, it wasn't your fault. But if somebody doesn't tell you anything, how would you know it wasn't your fault?
Right.
How do you know you didn't have something to do with it? Why they don't love you anymore? Whatever conclusions a child can come to, or even grown people come to, then that's what you're left with. So yeah, that part I did. And then on that point, I'm a single parent. I have 3 children, and they're
Okay.
beautiful, wonderful. But I do know it had an effect on how I didn't direct my life to those who really loved and cared for me. I wasn't able to receive it. I didn't know what it felt like. I couldn't trust it. So yeah, all of that part and the rest of it is in the stories all day long. The baby boy with whatever that plays over all day long, way too much, and all of the rest of them, domestic violence from a partner that plays over all day. In fact, it's a pandemic all over the world 4 or 5 times a week, and there isn't a lot done about it, even from the administration, from the law enforcement, because some of them are also violators themselves. So
Yeah, they're a large percentage of the violators from what I
say
read.
that, and then it's probably more than that, but it's kept off the records. From sports to parishioners, in the clergy, in the military, just pick a subject. So all of those things is what I'm saying. More often than not, nobody comes in your house and do stuff like that if there's a responsible man, and not just a male, whether it's a grandfather or uncle, a male figure, a single male parents, wonderful. But if there's no presence there, then the invader deliberately, it's a predator. They're watching. They see who doesn't have a meal. They see mama looking. They see that. And they know if she got more than one child, she needs help financially.
Right.
So that, that's what that's about. Because then you wasn't any jobs really available when I was coming along in the 50s and the 60s. So at that point, it led to that. There wasn't even a lot of other choices. So yeah, that led me to write. It's personal.
Okay.
And all those that it doesn't apply to, I'm really not saying that to you. It doesn't apply to me, people it doesn't apply to. So I want to say that to those who are listening.
Okay. Now you said something that was really interesting to me a minute ago, and that was you knew your parents were together, and then the next thing they weren't together, but you couldn't ask to figure out and get an understanding of what was going on in the household. Do you think that it's healthy for children to not be able to ask questions and to get an understanding of what happened? Because anything in the household does directly affect the child. So is that healthy? Is it not healthy? Should children be able to say, hey, mom, why aren't you and dad together anymore? And really get some honest answers about what's going on in the family.
I think they should. And not only on that subject, even financially and otherwise, you don't have to, you tell them, as a need to know basis, I think it's called now. But everybody know their children and how advanced they are or not. But you should never exclude them out of everything that's happening in the family that directs them. Not a side effect, it's a direct effect.
Right.
Yes, I think they should be included. And you can decide how much or less to include. But but it ain't got to be a little black lie, as they call it, a little white lie. No, tell them the truth as minimalistic as possible, because you have 20, 30% of children underperforming and overperforming and acting out, but they really feel like it's their fault because they wasn't allowed to ask, or they wasn't even given a hint that it was coming. It was a booger booger, one day's not. Or give them an idea or have a dialogue, what I'm saying now, have a dialogue with the children before anything happens, negative or positive. Have an ongoing open relationship. Yes, it's necessary. And matter of fact, it should be mandatory to their mental well-being and the well-being of their future.
Right. And I totally agree with you on that. I think I was 7 when my father, around 6 or 7 when my father left the home.
Oh my.
And it wasn't until I was probably in high school where I had an understanding of, what happened with my mom and my dad and why he ended up eventually leaving and this and the other. But that wasn't because someone came to me or my mom or dad came to me and said, hey, this is what happened. When I was in high school, and I'm like, I think I was in middle school when I started asking, why has my daddy never been around? Why hasn't he been here and this, that, and the other?
You
And
can't
so,
but notice it, right?
excuse me?
I said, you can't help but notice he's not there.
Right. You
It's
notice.
often or however, yeah.
Right. And there's this void there. And you're just told either stay out of grown folks' business or stay in a child's place, whatever these statements and quotes that we like to give that doesn't include the children of a family in family matters. And I think that's a very negative and debilitating way to look at things when it comes to children, because children, like you mentioned before, children are very smart. They're very observant. And for them to see all of these things happening around them and not get an explanation so they can have an understanding, like you said, then they are going to start asking questions to themselves, like, is this my fault? Did I do something? You know what I mean? Like, because they don't know. And I think that's very unhealthy for a child, because they're placing all of this guilt and unnecessary blame on themselves when it really has nothing to do with them. And so I just think we as a community need to do better as a whole with that. And you have some
one more quick thing, what I would like to do, because we did Black History Month. We talked all about the wonderfulness of what people had done. But if we don't emulate these things, if we don't incorporate them into our life, it's just a lesson in futility. Okay. It's just interesting stuff. As a matter of fact, most young people are just, oh, okay, here they come with Black History Month. Yeah. And it's wonderful. And some of them are glad to hear it, but it worked. It was necessary. And not only that, the part about abandonment and feeling angry and worthless, the bigger part also, you become very angry at the other person. And then it spills over you being angry in life. Yes. And then you're angry at the teacher. Basically, you're just angry with life in general.
Right.
So the worthlessness and or the anger has an equal amount, as you're saying, of ramifications toward the person that left you angry, or the life out of your control, didn't ask you. All of that has all of the effect, and I think that's a direct effect of why we're talking about it today again.
Yes. Now, in your pamphlet, Missing in Action Dads, you have some statistics. And you say the consequences of the absentee father is being exhibited worldwide at alarming rates. If the subject were germs or bacteria, it would be labeled an epidemic. Therefore, fatherlessness needs to be addressed immediately. The following statistics exemplify the ramifications of homes without fathers. 35% of children living in single mother-headed families have never met their father. That is horrible. That is absolutely terrible. 43% of homes in the US are fatherless. 66% of all girls who become pregnant is because the father's not in the home. 70% of juveniles in detention centers. 70% of the youth in long-term prison. 63% of youth commit suicide. 70% of youth commit violent crimes. 60% may become rapists and have anger issues. Those are some pretty disturbing statistics for children. Like, these are children, the numbers that I just read for. And so my question to you is, how do you think this epidemic, as you called it, of the absentee fathers got started?
Okay. Let me also say this again, because there are people who are just tuning in. There were a lot of people who stood in the gap and are standing in the gap right now. So to say, and then some fathers really needed to be out of these children's lives. We're talking about fathers who would have been made a positive impact, but
Right.
even knowing of them would have still made a positive impact because nobody wanted to feel they didn't ever have one.
Right.
And the children would
Correct.
join you and made fun of you. They really did, because
Yeah.
they can be cruel. But having said that, then we're not talking about those. But yeah, but what you're saying is, yeah, it's the same. Okay, just when we were talking about COVID, for instance, this is more than now. Had you not got on control of that, because and even yet today, it gets out of control, and then it has a generational thing.
Yes.
So this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
When you ignore, okay, now I'm gonna bring it on home to where we are. Pest. Whenever you see a roach, and I'm saying hello, people, a roach, any kind of, if you don't get on top of that, there are never a single bird.
Right. Correct.
Or rodent.
Right. Correct.
Stop me when I'm a performer, so I got to add a little bit. Stop me when I get to a lie. Miss Penny, stop me when I get to a lie.
Right.
But what I mean about it, any epidemic that gets out of control all over the world, but let's call it a pandemic. An epi is a more confined area, it's a lot, but a pandemic is worldwide. Can you imagine how many hundreds of thousands of veterans that left children all over the world? Now, they had to come back. Now, I'm not talking about those who sent for them, those who had to be sent backstage. I got that. But there are some who never looked back, never even gave it a thought, is what I'm talking about.
I know some.
At least think about it.
Yes.
Okay. At least because everything begins with a thought and the sense of, I feel bad about that. I hope they're all right. I have some compassion. I feel humanely about them. But back to what we were talking about, that it's a pandemic. So left out of control is where we are now. Why are the children fighting like that? What's wrong with them? They are a product of their environment.
Yes.
That kind of anger and unsolved hostility and whatever inhumane treatment, or somebody that beats a dog to death and let people see it. Every connotation of a reference is like, they treat him like a dog. They shot him like a dog, beat him up. All the references sound like a dog. Now, what do you think a child feels like if he has rage or doesn't care? He's gonna beat a physical dog.
Okay.
Socioeconomics. I didn't major in a lot of any of this. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing. So all of that, like he's saying, it's like it's the same thing coming around full circle. Man's inhumanity to man, which spills over to children's inhumanity to children. They are a product of their environment.
Yes. Yes.
And those statistics are probably they are. When I did the brochure and wrote the piece about this, the body of work, these statistics were old, so some of them may be fluctuating more or less. But as we know, domestic violence, and a lot of it, we only have the statistics, only those who are reported.
Yes.
So a lot of these statistics are more or less as years go by. So yeah, it's a pandemic, and it needed. If you don't even have to have the medicine for it, but you at least acknowledge that the symptoms are there. And if you don't do that, the diagnosis is going to always be just running rampant, and the symptoms will be portrayed as something else, but the diagnosis is usually the same.
Okay. And let me ask you about this as far as how this pandemic, as you called it, started. Well, here in the United States, I feel like a lot of this stems from slavery, and it stems from how they intentionally broke up the families and sold families off, and just made it a point to not have the father to be the lead or the head of the household, or to just get rid of him altogether. So do you think some of that still plays into why this pandemic of absentee fathers is so great?
I think it plays into why it's being accepted. Well, people say, well, it's not being accepted, but it's being tolerated.
Tolerated, right?
Anything that's being tolerated is being accepted, and it doesn't mean you like it. But I would say it goes back further than that if people want to start reading really old books, but this is not that day. We'll have another program for that day.
Okay.
If you read back in other books older than that, 500 years, it's always been like that between males need to dominate, you know, whether it's a particular race or a person can only feel good about themselves if they don't dominate unless they dominate someone else, you know.
Mm.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
they have no frame of reference to their alleged superiority. So yes, what you're saying is absolutely true. So it's really, there's only one truth, Vincent. This is how I feel. If you divide anything that's supposed to be a unit, you can conquer it. Whether it's males and females, turn them on each other. You pay a female more money than you're paying her husband, and he can't get a real job. That family, the love that's there, 30% or more is not going to last. Okay. And if it lasts, there's so much tension in the home that the children are going to pick up on it. So it's not, it's the direct effect of what you're saying, true. The same way with race, put some races against each other. Well, you know, affirmative actions, there's another race that's saying, well, wait a minute, you didn't use my tax money and let us go to college with less of this or that. So then you turn races against each other. Then you wind up with the Civil War. Then once you do that, it's the art of war. It's dividing and conquer. If you can divide anything or any group, there's only one truth, as we're saying again, the results are still the same. The intentions are still the same, yes, in what you're saying. And the results are coming down the same.
Okay. Well, I definitely feel like, well, from the research that I've done about this country and the history of racism and the problems in the Black or melanated community, all can be directly pointed back to slavery and a lot of the things they did to us during slavery. Okay. But with that being said, I don't think that should be used as a perpetual excuse to not be present in your children's lives. I mean, at some point,
I love that.
I do believe it is necessary to know that that is a key root of the problem. But at the same time, once we know that that's a key root of the problem, what steps can we take as individuals and what steps can we take as a community to undo those things?
I love that. First of all, let's say this. There's some students, and I think it's been passed somewhere, where you can upgrade the words, the terminology in the dictionary, in Webster, and upgrade what the meaning is. Because what meant vines back in the day was called some cool rags and some sharp clothes and Mac Daddy dressing fine. But nobody knows what vines are anymore. Ask them what we call vines. The same thing with racism. Racism, it's been added to be called systemic racism.
Yes.
And what that means, it's allowed. What that means, everybody can do it. What that means, every facet of life in this where we are is ingrained in there, which means they've been given, whoever has been given permission to carry it on. But why would we buy into it, as you were saying, if you know what's going on? Oftentimes, you are led into it without even realizing you're participating.
Correct.
Our children get involved in, the woman said, my child is not like that. He never would have gone off and done any of that. This is not the child I know. He's got a 2-parent family who loves him, who went to Scout. He was a Scout leader and took him to. So none of that is why. Because the influence on the mindset, on the flesh, is always done by what you see, not necessarily what you know.
Right.
What you see and what you hear. So why don't we do differently? It can be used as a scapegoat to use it, but knowing it and doing it, the mind makes the body. So you would have to have a mindset shift, but the bottom line has to do with lack of self-love, which is a mental situation. And there is no funding for mental whatever. And they don't even have enough doctors to even have mental doctors to even bring somebody to counseling. If all of us, the people, all races, I need mental therapy. There's no availability of therapists or agencies or hospitals or facilities. The bottom line is lack of self-love. So why won't we do it? Because if you don't feel good about yourself, then
Correct.
you don't have a problem pointing a weapon at me or you, just like, and 4 or 5 of y'all, you look just like me. I'm not
Right.
worth anything. No one cares. They can beat me like a dog, leave me. All the references, even by the police, say they left them look like roadkill. Whatever the references are, then it becomes, because it's systemic, it becomes acceptable, and you don't even know you bought into it yourself until something like, why did I say that like that? It's in our makeup and fiber because it's been ingrained visually.
Yes.
And in your heart systemically over time. So what we're doing now, this program, what you all doing, educating the community, this forum is enough is enough with us. Where do we start? We start with us. And anybody that's on the line, we start with us.
Yes.
First, mental wellness. Find out why you do what you do, why you don't do what you want me to do.
Right.
Where can you start? This is a whole thing. I'm leaving it in the chat. Fathers Incorporated has 4 or 5 categories. It's excuse me. It's mental, social, financial. It's all kind of areas. But the main thing, you have to trust and believe that it's something you need to do. Because if you don't feel that way, you're not going to approach it. Like a person going to AA, the first thing I heard of any kind of help agencies, hello, my name is Pamela Poole-Starks, and I'm a this or that. Until you admit that you are one, then you're not going to trust in the process. In fact, you're not even seeking the process. And if you go to find the process to do better and believe differently, mindset shift, to shift you from not doing what you said we should do and not do, even when we know and hear, why don't we? Because first of all, it has to start with changing our mindset shift to ourselves, which puts us back to mental wellness and self-love.
Okay.
That's what I.
All right. And I want to give a few more statistics here, because you mentioned a few minutes ago that it's not an epidemic, it's a pandemic because it's worldwide, correct?
Yes.
So I want to give the countries that have the highest single parent household. Coming in at number 5 is Denmark with 17%. Number 4 is Russia with 18%. Number 19 is Sao Tome and Principe, which I have no idea what that is, and I meant to look it up before I started so I could educate.
But that's okay. We
the public, but maybe at another date. Number 2 is the United Kingdom with 21%. And of course, holding the number 1 spot is the United States of America with 23%. And so let's bring it back home. The percentage of single parent households by ethnicity here in the United States. The Black community, 64% single parent household. Native American community, 52%. Latin community, 40%. White community, 24%. And the Asian community is 15%. Now, my question to you is, what impact does having an absentee father have on the children as individuals, and what impact does it have on the community as an overall?
Okay, what I also want to say, because the guest you had on might have been yesterday or the day before in reference to single parents, this is no shade, as we call it, on anyone who stood in the gap. No, I need to say this because you got people who on the line and who stood in the gap or didn't have the parent wasn't in there, but they stood in the gap. Or the parent that was absent needed to have been because it was such a negative influence. So we're putting a disclaimer about we're not talking about those. But what effect about having the absentee parents? What was your question again? Because I was going to say something about that.
What is the impact does having an absentee father have on the individual children and on the community as a whole?
I'm going to answer for myself. Since you can't, 55,000 people, I don't feel that way. First of all, you feel unprotected
Mm. Okay.
Second of all, you feel unloved and unappreciated. Because if you were loved and appreciated, why would they not be there?
Right.
Third of all, you feel untaken care of financially. You feel that whatever your situation is or wasn't, not those that had it like that with him being gone or whatever, you feel untaken care of financially, which means you never have anything you want, not a want, but need it. You feel poor, and with the poor financial feeling, you also feel emotionally poor. And you always feel you never have it. Even if you ever get a lot, you still have that poor, scrounging mentality because it affected you mentally. You're poor, you're poor mentally you are poor. And with that, you always have a deficiency in your heart. Not only that, I'm speaking for myself. I had, over the relationship to being a single parent, the one person that came into my life after these parents, single parents, the parent missing in action dads, loved me dearly, wanted to marry me. I didn't feel worthy or love worthy enough to even accept it.
Oh, wow.
And when I look back at it, as the representative asked me, how were the children doing when she was doing this single parent family, and have a big today, because the day actually is Happy Single Parent Day to me too, yay. She told us to say that, by the way. She was on your station. But to let you know, I listen. But the bottom line is, when you don't feel love, you say you're worthy of love. Yes, I'm worthy of love, but you can't receive it because you don't trust it. You don't feel the person probably doesn't really mean it, or it's probably not going to last. That deficiency again. Well, it's here now, but it probably won't stay. But because of how the movement was. And I did everything I could when I looked at it. I actually sabotaged it.
Mm.
And
Wow.
hurt him so bad, he said so. He was a writer. He said never been hurt that badly in his life.
Mm.
I mean, love, unconditional, me, the children, everything. And if somebody's on the line, could probably come back to you and say, that happened with me too. And divorces, whatever. In other words, when a piece of the pie is missing, there's always a little deficiency on how you approach life or not. That's how I feel that how it affects us and me. I'm okay now, I think, but I really mean that. There's always a little hole when you don't have the whole pie. Even if someone stands in the gap for you, give you everything, love you, but there's no way that a female can fill that up. As with the male, you can love him out. You could be a whole person, just one, my mother, my grandmother, auntie, but it's just something about it. Because God, I believe that it would not have needed the sperm and, I'm sorry, because you do have children on, and I really mean this, whatever it needed to make a human being, if it was not needed, I don't feel that God would have had it that way for the creation to take place. So that's just me. But I'm saying that it's needed, it's necessary, and it does have an effect whether you go through life smoothly and everything seems to be fine. There is a little something that's a little bit missing. That's my story.
Right.
That's my walk. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
How about you? How about you?
Ooh.
If we have time. But
No,
no,
we're fine. I was gonna give some more
an open
statistics.
forum. I mean, it is, and this we have to have this discussion because we're having it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so my personal experience, I can tell you that when my father left, there was a lot of anger on my part.
Okay.
And my anger resulted in me acting out. I became a pyromaniac for a short while when I was 8 and 9 years old. And I just didn't listen. I wouldn't, my mom, aunts, uncles, like everybody, the village would take turns in beating my behind because I was so just all over the place, you know. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand why. Middle school, high school, I was angry. And part of that was what you keep saying, when a piece of the pie is not there, there's going to be this turmoil and chaos. And for me, I didn't realize that a big part of that was my father being absent until I was 27, 28 years old, when me and my father, we mended our relationship. And but that only happened because my father tried to commit suicide, because he was, he had been on drugs for a long time. At that time, he didn't have a relationship with any of his children. And so that happened. And when that happened, my mother called me and told me to go check on him. And I'm like, well, you want me to go check on him for? I don't even know this man. Because to me, at that point, he's a stranger. He's been gone 20 years. He's a stranger. But I eventually did go see him in the hospital. He looked horrible. And I really didn't know how to feel, because I had so much anger towards him. When I saw him in the hospital, I was like, good, that's what you get. But then there was the other part that was like, I was also on had just started my spiritual journey then, which is why I even went to go see him. And that side was saying, this is your father, you need to love on him, you need to forgive him and give him another chance. And so in the 30 minutes I was in the room with him, all of this stuff went through my head. But eventually, after that day, we mended our relationship. In the last 6 years, well, we had a 6-year relationship after that until he passed. And those 6 years for me were very healing for me, because I actually got a chance to get to know my father. And I got a chance to see where a lot of my personality comes from. Like, I found out I had so many things in common with my father. It was uncanny at first. And so that part of me that was so angry because he was never there just kind of dissipated over the years as we built our relationship. And for me as a grown-up, that meant everything to me. That meant everything to me. So, like, even with my friends and people I know now, if they're in a situation where the relationship is strained for whatever reason, reach out. I mean, because sometimes after so much time goes by, people feel like, oh, it's been too much time. I can't do this, and that's not true. For the children, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
For the children, that is one of the most important things, is to have that, because we're made of energy, and you need the energy from your mom, the energy from your dad.
Yes, a whole pie.
That whole pie. Whether the people are in the home or not, they just need to be present to have that whole pie and to feel some sense of wholeness.
Also, Vincent, it's interesting that we are having this, and I'm hoping people are on the line, really, because you have helped heal me. You have actually blessed me with some things you said. Also, I want to find my father, because at that fact, the fast forward, how does this pan out? Why do we need to do this? Why are we having this conversation? It's necessary to forgive, because the forgiveness is not for the violator, it's for the forgiver. But ultimately, it's actually both should benefit. But having said that, then I want to go to the point, I want to find mine after all those years. And I was like at 50, 60, whatever. He had actually gone back to his hometown where he was born, but I didn't know that. When I went to find him, just to fast forward before we went out of town, they say, don't put it off if it's possible. Most time people are afraid to find out because they might not like what they find, or they might like them some, and now they hate it. They wish they hadn't, but for whatever reason, but we did. I went to find mine, and when I went to find him, he passed. He died. He made his transition almost to the date a year later. I asked him just what you said. Why? What didn't you? But Dad, he said, he looked at me with tears in his eyes. He said, baby girl, do you think that when I was out, they call them peckerwoods back in Carolina, that when we was on the peckerwood and watching my dad and mom work like that with nothing, never had nothing, and I always felt so poor and insignificant. Do you think I planned to do that when I was small, to have a family? and not take and leave them. Do you think I planned to do that? As much as you know about me, you know. And I looked at his eyes and we cried. And barely by the time, and by the way, we had the same license tag number, if that makes sense, people, go figure. Our license tag, and we went, we don't talk about lottery, but anyway, when we got back home, but to the date, he passed. Had I not done that, for me being the forgivee,
right,
I would not be at the point of where we are right now. Just saying this to people who are on the line, that if it's earthly possible, or find if you can or not, whatever, but don't take the children to that. Talk, like you said, talk with them now. It's not working out. We don't know. We might have to break up. Say something to them, even though they see it already. We might break up, but I want you to know it's not because we don't love you. We're going to be here for you, and it may not seem like it, but we're going to work with it. We're going to try to make this all right. Say something to them before and during, so they won't feel so angry and so left out and so insignificant. As we said, we have to get to, I'm 72, you know, but I'm still healing.
Right. And healing sometimes can take a lifetime. Right?
Yes.
It can, but something has to facilitate and start the process. And I can only say to people out there listening, if you do have a strained relationship with either one of your parents and they're still alive,
either one,
try to bring some peace to that so you can have some internal peace. Well, whatever the outcome is, at least try to have the conversation and see where it goes. But like you said earlier, Pamela, some fathers don't deserve to be in the home, and some were put out.
Some are dangerous. I mean, yeah, absolutely, they're dangerous or whatever.
And if you go and you find that out to be true, then still you can take the necessary steps to see how you want to move forward or move on. But if you don't know for yourself, then you're steady living in other people's reality and their dogma about your other parent. You know what I mean? So I encourage everyone to find out for themselves, no matter how painful it may be, to get the answers that they're searching for.
And not only that, Vincent, thank you for saying that about, since you went to see your father, because you're working so intrinsically with young people, you are a better person to work with them. Not a counselor, not you don't have papers, you don't have a degree, but you're a better person to work with them on a one-on-one, and you see what it smells like, you know what it sounds like, you know what it feels like. Not that you're right all the time, but usually you're right because you've been there, done that, and are still healing. But on that note, fathersincorporated.com is where we want to go. It's got all kind of different departments that people can get whatever they want to do, tap into it, believe and trust that the process works. If anybody's on the line or direct somebody that may need to, it had the most extensive programming in different categories: socio, psychological, mental, all of that, financial, all of that is in there. And I wanted to say thank you so much for being so receptive to the subject, in that I didn't even know anything about you like that. We didn't even know this when we first met.
Correct.
So God be the glory that this is what and it's an ongoing subject. It's a pandemic, and all of those who are not hearing and tap in all over the world that know that the first thing has to start with loving yourself. But if you don't know who you are and you've never seen love and haven't felt it, how can you?
Very true.
So, you know, but it's possible. It starts with a step and it begins with the day and it begins with now. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. I totally.
When you say that, that means what you're going to do more, not just say that. It's become, you know, the public gets on catchphrases that just drive it, but do something with it, positive, so the youth can see and start to behold, you know. But the wholeness, the brokenness came from somewhere else. They were born into it, you know.
And you know what I realized about my father when we were getting to know each other before he passed? My father was broken and he never healed. And so, but due to his unhealing, which would lead to the behaviors that my father told me straight out his mouth. He said, "Son, I just couldn't leave them women alone." He said, I couldn't leave them women alone.
It was acceptable behavior, and it was acceptable behavior in the system. It was.
But for me, for him to take that accountability and to be honest with me, even though nobody wants to hear that, you cheating on mom and all that. Nobody wants to hear that. But he gave me answers, the answers that we couldn't get when we were children.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I do believe that some of the answers given to children at an early age will help
Mm-hmm.
curb some of the anger and some of the negativity surrounding, these situations. But again, that goes back to the parents. And I told this to Penny recently
Start healing
on a program she was doing a few weeks ago. We have these sayings in our community where a child should stay in a child's place and children should be seen and not heard. And I think those are some of the most detrimental
I'm getting grown folk business.
Statements that we can say pertaining to children in regards to the subject matter we're having now, in regards to physical abuse, in regards to many things that concern children. And like you said earlier, adults always say when we're talking about business, when we're talking about relationships, we always say that communication is the key to anything. So why are we not communicating with our children? Why are we not explaining to our children, this is sometimes happen with grown-ups, this sometimes happen with grown-ups, and it creates these situations.
Or in life, this life happens.
Like, why don't we communicate with our children like that? I don't understand that. And children, and like you said, I work with children. So I know how smart children can be. I know the level of intuition that children have. And we treat them like
they up
so
there.
Aggravating to me. We have to do better with that as a community. Like even, my mom loved to say, back in my day, you'd have been knocked upside the wall for doing this. And my response, back in your day, it was wrong then, and it should have been wrong then, and it's wrong today.
Child abuse in any other time and in board, it's child abuse.
Hey, like there's just things we should change. Right? Let's talk. Let's have a conversation.
But what you're saying about also, let's say this: there's nothing new under the sun. Didn't mean to interrupt you, but think about David talking about that womanizing and his son, the kings again. Whether people believe this or not, this is a Christian station, but I'm just saying, whether that's the case or not, got different religions who are tuning in with much respect. But with David, that was part of his problem. But his son was the same, ultimately down probably maybe to his demise. But I just can't leave this women alone. But there's nothing new under the sun. Right. As long as we're in the flesh, the problems are the same. How we approach them and whether we solve them or not is where we are in 2023. Don't keep duplicating it with the same results.
Correct.
Pandemics.
Correct. Yes. And to your point about don't keep duplicating the same results, I'm going to mention this, and maybe you and I can have another show about this later.
Please.
But because of what I went through with my father, and my father being absent, my father used to do stuff like I was 7 or 8 after he would call me. We would talk on the weekend or during the week, and he would say he's going to come see me on the weekend, and then he would get absent. Like you can't do things like that with children. But the point that I wanted to make is, did I lose you, Pamela? Pamela? Okay, maybe I think we might have. Okay, yeah, I think we might have lost it. But let's talk about some of the solutions.
Yes.
To what's going on. Oh, there you are. Now I forgot my other point, but that's okay.
Solutions. No, this is.
I want to talk about solutions because you've mentioned fathersincorporated.com a couple of times. What exactly is fathersincorporated.com?
Fathersincorporated.com is a website that has all kinds of categories, what you can tap into, and agencies are listed in the categories by the cities and by the states, where you can tap into with resources, because that's what we want to do. What can you start to do something about what we're talking about? Right. It has the resources, the source places, the agencies, and whatever it is where you want to start. But I think it starts with self-help, mental wellness, probably. And then it goes to the socioeconomic, it goes to financial, interacting with the females, with the children, with the community, with social groups, with whatever. That's what that is. The whole is an extensive site, and most of it's funded and it's available in almost all cities and called by another agency, but that's the blanket agency I think that it's under in the website.
Okay. All right.
Incorporation. It's not an agency, it's an incorporation, yes.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. And is this some an organization you work with, or is just something you know about?
The thing about it, I have worked with it just on a community level. I don't have any current organizations I'm working with at this time. However, anytime you're working with anybody one-on-one, but I don't have anything to furnish to the listening audience today. Originally, what I had was some workshops as a pitch.
Okay.
Anybody who wanted to come into that, what it would be workshops where first they went in to talk with each other, say 16 to 20, early 20s. They would come to the workshop. It's called Showing Up. And then they would just talk to say, this is who I am. I have 3 children, whatever, and talk about, as AA or any agency, first you come to talk about what's going on with you. And then from there, they would go on to the workshops, at 6 weeks of workshops in each city, which was spilled out into every state and duplicate the same formula. And then they would come like 6 weeks of that. Then 6 weeks of come and just talk with each other to find out what they're doing, why they're doing, and why they're not doing it. And then have the resource people come to their workshops for whatever it is they need. Because oftentimes it's usually literacy action. If they haven't finished school for whatever reasons, they got behind or whatever, dropped behind, most times they can't read. So even if they don't want to go to college or do other things to assist themselves as a new dad, already a dad, a future dad, they still need to have some point of foundation for themselves. So within these workshops, they're going to be finding resources that are going to come to the workshop one at a time, or maybe 2 or 3 different research agencies that's going to come and be there for them, not just juvenile or the court system, or someone that's going to come with job opportunities or work study opportunities, or some kind of things. There's funding, I think I heard it say yesterday about for single parents, that has funding for job training, for all kinds of categories, for all kinds of fields, or schooling, preschool, all of that. These people would be coming to the workshop 2 or 3 at a time, but first you need a place. But the first thing you have to have, the participants have to trust in the process. They have to believe in the process. And then if they say they need to be at least 17 or 18, when they do come, they have to be coming with an idea to want to do the process and want to feel like they want to help themselves. Because medicine or vitamins, anything does not work if it's in the bottle, on the shelf, in the medicine kit. You have to take it. So first they have to believe in the process, and most time they have to have cooperation from the family. So these are the 3 challenges that I find with the pitch for these workshops I'm talking about. They need support, because a lot of times, even as an addict, if everybody else, you go back home to all of the addicts in your house, that's the formula for failure.
Right.
So that's what I was going to say. This is a pitch that I had in mind. I don't have anything that's currently in place for this solutions, but the workshop is called Showing Up Workshops. And then have it in all the cities, ultimately in all the states. And then you start to see results. But this pandemic, like they started giving people, whether you wanted a vaccine or not, they started some at a time to arrest it. You have to stop it somewhere so it doesn't spread other places, but it's already spread it now, the pandemic we're talking about. So I think those kind of things would work, and it shouldn't take a whole lot of funding, but I don't know, for the agencies that are going to be part of the workshops are already in place. They're already funded. It just be a matter for the participants to come and partake in the benefits.
Okay. I like that.
Now, the pandemic we're talking about.
I think everything you said is pertinent. But for me, I think the main things are, we definitely need organizations and resources for people, like you stated. But
mental wellness first and foremost, I think.
Yes,
literacy action and mental wellness. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because the mental aspect of it can be very heavy, and a lot of people do, and there's still this stigma in our community about getting mental health. I had a friend, I have two friends tell me in the past year they're getting mental help for personal issues. And you know, first thing I did when they told me that, great, I'm so proud of you. Good job. Because one, and everybody's not telling everybody that business that they do mental health. But when
especially
people,
men.
right, but when people do tell me, I want to big up them so much and make them feel so proud because they're doing the right thing. They're doing, they're seeking healing for themselves. And we need to spread the word through our community. There's nothing wrong with getting help for mental issues. We all have them, especially if you live in this country. But
how could you not?
Right. So we have to take the necessary step, which means taking accountability for ourselves. And then once we take accountability for ourselves, we can take accountability for our community.
And them too. Absolutely.
But that's the most important thing. And so I want to thank you for coming to me to have this discussion. It's a very important discussion. I just had some resources put in the chat, celebrating our sons and daughters, co-parenting during a crisis, fatherhood, engagement, social justice, and youth educational outcomes, finding common ground. Okay.
And then and somebody also said the generation, but it begins with us. Like I said, I'm 72. So breaking the generation, because talk to the children. Stop, same thing. Don't start it the same way we got started. Children shouldn't mess in grown folk business, but grown folk business mess up children.
Oh, Lord of mercy. Amen. Sister, you said a mouthful just then. That was a whole word. Okay. And it's very true. And I think as the adults, we have to take the accountability of how it's affecting our children. Because if it's having a major impact on you, it's definitely having a major impact on your children. And there are all types of programs. I've participated in programs. Real Dads Read, where you go into schools and play father to a classroom full of children.
Literacy.
Books to them.
Be able to read. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so there are all these things that we can do. But thank you for bringing the conversation to me. Fathersincorporated.com. Is that Fathers with Incorporated spelled out, or the fathersinc.com?
It's Fathers Incorporated. That's my understanding. Lowercase, all one word. Fathersincorporated.com.
Okay.
But that's just the website. But the agency is probably INC, since you said that. But you can Google it. Yeah.
All right. And with that being said, let me give the number to the suicide crisis lifeline.
Yes, please. The mental wellness, yes.
Number, yes, but now they've changed it to 988 as a text. So if you text 988, you can get someone from the suicide and crisis lifeline on the phone, and then you can have someone to start talking to. And again, that number is 988. In the chat, it says, my pastor always said there's no such thing as an illegitimate child, but illegitimate parents. Ooh. Ooh.
We have 2 T-shirts we can print it right away.
Man, I'm on a T-shirt.
I'm putting my TM on it now. Don't stop.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. There's no such thing as an illegitimate child.
Seriously. That's right.
Illegitimate parents.
That's
deep. Now we're gonna wrap up the show, and thank you very much, Ms. Pamela Poole-Starks, for coming onto the program and bringing this important, not only individual topic, but community topic, world topic. This is a worldwide issue. So thank you very much. And
it's an honor. It's an honor for thanking you, for Ms. Penny, for allowing me to lend my voice to, as you said, education, your program, community, educating the community. You are inspirational, motivational, and also educational, and also entertaining. Thank you so much. I love being here. I do.
I love having you here. Your insight, even when I talk to you on a personal level on a phone call, you always leave me with something positive. And that's important, because we're, like you said earlier, we're all going through stuff. So I thank you. I give you your flowers. Hold on. I give you your flowers while you are here, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I
What?
appreciate you. I really do. That website is www.fathersincorporated with incorporated spelled out.
Thank you. Yes.
Fathersincorporated.com.
Yes.
Like I said, thank you. Before I let you go, when you blanked out earlier, the next subject I want to do with you, because we're talking about absentee fathers right now. I'm in a unique situation or a different situation but I'm lumped in with absentee fathers and deadbeat dads. But my situation,
I hate that saying, but anyway, I really hate hearing even anybody saying that. Yeah. But,
why don't you like that?
But if that's your narrative, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to take your narrative away, but sometimes when you put a blanket statement out there, it hits home to whatever somebody, well, it wasn't my fault. I was sick. I have mental problems. So when you say that, those phrases, sometimes catchphrases can be very, very damaging. Oftentimes they're helpful, but they can be very damaging. And I try not to let too many catchphrases come out of our mouth.
Okay.
Because oftentimes it's used to sabotage ourselves, and we're not aware of it. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, though.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Well, in the chat earlier, somebody asked me how's my relationship with my son when I was talking about my son earlier. Currently, I don't have a relationship with my son. He's 21, and it goes into what I was going to say, what I was mentioning about we should do another show on.
Okay.
Because people are always talking about toxic masculinity. And toxic masculinity is a real thing. Happens every day. But you know what else is real? Toxic femininity. That's a real thing also. And like you mentioned earlier about breaking the generational cycle of having absentee fathers. That was one of the goals I set when I was probably still in high school, that I would always be there for my child because my father was not there for me. And I didn't want to ever continue that cycle. But what happened go ahead.
So in that way, he had a negative positive effect on you. I'm hedging.
Yeah. So what happened
and he been better than he might. Anyway, keep going.
What happened was I broke up with my son's mother when he was almost 2. And that's because she was very controlling and manipulative, right? But what I did was when I moved out, I moved into the same complex because I wanted to stay near my son. Me and his mom, she drew up a contract that said we would share joint custody, and I would pay her $500 a month in child support with no quarter. I had just started teaching, and I was making a lot of money, so $500 a month for my son was nothing to me. And we signed.
You want to go public with all your personal stuff right now?
Yeah, I do.
No.
I'm just giving you the abridged version because this
is next show. Okay, keep going.
But when I left and did all these things, I paid her that $500 a month for almost a year, probably 8 or 9 months. It totaled $7,800. What she did was then, in turn, use the money that I paid her to kidnap my son, take him to New York. When she got to New York, she went straight to the court system and told the court system that I beat her and my son mercilessly every day, was the word she used, mercilessly. Every day. And with her doing that, the court system put a restraining order on me. And so I was getting ready to go visit him, and I couldn't go visit my son. And so from that, it's been the past 19 years have been up and down of her making sure I don't have a relationship with my son, as hard as I tried to fight to have a relationship with my son. And so I'm just bringing that up to say that when a father is not in children's lives all the time, it's not necessarily because he doesn't want to be there. There have been circumstances created and things said where she has literally turned my son against me. You know what I mean? And so I think you're muted, Pamela. And so I think that's
why I did this disclaimer when we first got started. But there are hundreds of thousands of situations like this. Right. So I wanted to say that for those who are viewing that's in this situation like this before we got started.
Right. And so that's what I just wanted to mention that and say that I think we should have another show discussing that because that is a huge problem. I know plenty of men who are in the same situation that I'm in, where the mother has literally taken the child, she used the court system to get custody of the child in whatever way, and then she turns the child against them. Question in the chat says, now that he's an adult, are you willing to connect? I've been trying to connect with him. For the past 5 years, I've been texting my son. Just I either text him that I love you or I miss you or whatever. And I just leave it at that. But it's not about me connecting, it's on him now. But he's not trying to connect because of things that his mother has told him. Like, she's totally turned him against me. And I know how controlling and manipulative she can be. And so I don't blame her for anything. So when I started texting him 5 years ago, he's never texted me back in the 5 years that I've been texting him. And that first year, I used to get upset and hurt by that because I wanted him to reach out and accept my olive branch so bad. But he hasn't. And so, but I still do it. And I had to come to the realization at one point that although he doesn't respond to my text when I text him, he also doesn't tell me to stop texting. So I know that before he turned 14, we had a great relationship. It wasn't until he turned 14 and started high school that his mother really started, she made him call his grandmother, my mother, and tell my mom that he doesn't want to have anything to do with his dad or this side of the family anymore. And we've done nothing to him. And so my whole point is that there are situations created, and I know plenty of other men who are my friends, they're in situations where the woman was so angry or bitter after the breakup that she keeps the child from or turns the child against the father. And I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, because that's going on a lot more than people know. And a lot of it is because a lot of men don't like talking about it. A lot of times I've had these conversations, it's because I brought it up to other people, and then other men will share some of the things that they've gone through. So I know it's definitely a conversation that needs to be had.
So how about this, Vincent? Let's have it soon. Let's don't have too much space going between it. So then it would kind of be like a series for the dialogue to keep going, because to bring it back like months from now, we'd start back over setting the backdrop for it, set it up. I think it would be good to have it, maybe soon. It doesn't have to be on the calendar, Father's Day or nothing like that.
No.
Let's have it soon whenever you can arrange it, because that way the storyline would continue and you'd have the backstory to continue to help carry it along. But this it's definitely something that's needed as soon as possible, if not sooner. And maybe even have someone else on with us. I mean, with you or someone else in general, but definitely for sure.
I'll do that. I'll try to get one of my friends to come on and share their side of the story. But we can, if you're available in May, I think our May show is on May 16th.
Okay.
So if you're available May 16th, we can continue that conversation. But I feel like that's a conversation that definitely needs to be had, because people are always talking about deadbeat dads and absent fathers, and that is a real issue and a problem.
But of course, and not only just, and it's not necessarily racial either. It transcends all races too.
Right.
But we always have catchy phrases, so they're always attributed to our race. But anyway, I'm gonna need to
Yeah. Okay. So May 16th, let's set that up, you and I. And after everything I just said about my son's mother, I don't want to sit here and act like I'm without fault. Like, we had issues, but I didn't do anything to where you should take my son from me. For a man who wants to be in his child's life.
But you know what? That's why I said we're gonna follow up soon, because you'll have one other guest to come on too to say that, because it's only fair that everybody's voice comes in.
Correct.
So soon, May would be good.
Okay, I got you. I appreciate that. We'll if you're available May 16th, let me know as soon as possible, and then we'll have that conversation as well.
I bubbled it in. Yes.
But let's see. We're gonna close with this. The Annie Casey Foundation, which is all the stats I gave today came from the Annie Casey Foundation, in the information they put out last year. But one of the most important things I feel like they said is that maintaining an involved, nurturing relationship with the non-custodial parent is highly important for a child's well-being. Okay, maintaining an involved, nurturing relationship with the non-custodial parent is highly important for a child's well-being. And like, unless it's a situation like Pamela said earlier, where you know the other parent is abusive or something to that effect, then I feel it's very important for both parents to be in a child's life. With that being said, one more time for the people listening in the back, maintaining an involved, nurturing relationship with the non-custodial parent is highly important for a child's well-being. That's that balance. That balance. You have to have the energy from the mother and the father for a child to be balanced. Okay, with that being said, thank you to my guest, Pamela Poole-Starks. I really appreciate you. You are an asset to this planet. Before we go, I have to do my Scholar of the Week. Today's Scholar of the Week goes to an Atlanta teen. She is a senior at Westlake High School, and she goes by the name of Daya Brown. Congratulations to Miss Daya Brown. Miss Daya Brown are in order, because she has been accepted to over 50 colleges and universities and has earned over $1.3 million in scholarship money. Okay, so congrats to Miss Daya Brown for being accepted to over 50 colleges and universities and earning over $1.3 million in scholarship money. She says, student loans are something that I do not want. So this is kind of a gift both to myself and my parents, so they can chill and relax. Daya says she enjoys poetry and film production. She also has her own production company called Elom and Company Production. That's ELOM. Elom and Company Productions. Out of the 50 schools and universities that she was accepted to, Daya chose to go to Duke University, and she will be majoring in visual media studies with a minor in journalism. So congrats to Miss Daya Brown for all that scholarship money that she earned and for making her parents' life that much easier. That is awesome. So again, if you have any students that you know out there that are doing great things in the community or in the classroom, send their names to me at alchemyartisaninc@gmail.com, and I will give them a shout out on the show. There's so much on the news and in the community about the negative things that our children are doing all the time. Let's shine some light on the positive things that our children are doing. And with that being said, thank you to our listening audience for tuning in today. You are truly, truly appreciated. Thank you to my guest, Ms. Pamela Poole-Starks. And we appreciate you all for listening. Until next month, you all be blessed, and we'll see you then. Peace.